Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining me today for the Process of Leader Development, hosted by our U.S. Army Partnership, and our speaker today will be Lieutenant Colonel Brian Williams. And thank you again for joining us, Lieutenant Colonel Williams. So just to give a bit of an introduction about our speaker, Lieutenant Colonel Williams used to work as an instructor at the U.S. Army's College and General Staff, U.S. Army Command and General Staff College of Fort Leavenworth, but he now resides at Fort Knox, Kentucky, where he is a Brigade Operations Officer for the 1st SROTC Brigade, the United States Cadet Command. Without further ado, I will kick it off to Lieutenant Colonel Williams. And again, feel free to ask any questions you like. We have a chat box available. We also have points during the presentation where you can interject and ask questions to the speaker and to get discussion flowing. So again, enjoy the presentation.
Hey, again, good afternoon. My name is Brian Williams. As mentioned, I'm a Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Army. I am an infantry officer by trade, and I have been an instructor at the United States Army Command and General Staff College just out at Fort Leavenworth. For those of you who may be familiar, but I've also done some other educational things, in a sense, for mentorship within the Army during my Army career. Earlier, when I was a captain, I was what we call an observer controller, but really it's a mentor at the Joint Readiness Training Center, and that was Fort Polk. So even though I'm an infantry officer, I spent a lot of my time, in a sense, with mentorship and or leader development throughout the Army. And I guess a really quick question. I don't happen to see the slides, so does everybody else see the slides, or does anybody not see them?
Is anyone having issues viewing the slides? Okay, I just had a quick question, Lieutenant Colonel Williams. What name are you speaking under? Is it I can see that you're caller number 3, but then is there another name that's associated with you when you logged in today?
I don't believe so. I see the guests. I see Celise, Sheila, Carsley, Frank.
Okay, one second.
As long as everybody else can see them, I'll be fine.
See if we can get you set up here. 1 minute. Are you logged in? Can you see anything on the screen, Lieutenant Colonel Williams?
I see your meeting, topic U.S. Army, the process of leader development, audio in their gray, audio conference, invite and remind, share my desktop, and then in the lower right, leave meeting. And it appears that my computer is thinking, so I'm not sure if they did something over the weekend.
Oh no. Okay, well ideally I would like to give the presentation over to you, but just give me 1 second. I think we're experiencing little technical difficulties.
I guess maybe while we're waiting is, most of the group is educators then, from my understanding?
Hi there, Lieutenant Williams. I can actually control the PowerPoint presentation, and as long as everyone else can see it, we can work a little bit on trying to get you the ability to change between presentations and between slides. Do you happen to have a copy of the presentation in front of you, Lieutenant Williams?
Yes, I do. Always prepared, right?
Perfect. That's absolutely amazing. So why don't we go from here? Maybe that I can control the slides going back and forth. And
I would do appreciate that, and I do apologize up front to everybody here. So we'll try to, get through this as painlessly as possible. But I think the going back to my time at the Command and General Staff College, because I think that would be it's a pivotal time frame for a young officer, because their role in leadership is changing, and so I think that's. And we're going to go to the next slide here. And before we go there, I guess the question is, what is leadership? And you can ponder that, or if somebody has a suggestion or anything, we can talk about it right now if we like. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And what we have is there's different levels of leadership, and I think most of us are familiar with that because of our work experience and life experience. We have leadership that is in a direct role, where you're right there, you're working directly with your subordinates in a sense. And then another level of leadership is organizational leadership, which is you're a little bit further away. And then that's the transitional period that I focused on when I was at the Command and General Staff College, because it's that organizational leadership which we were trying to develop in those young field grade officers, because they're no longer directly, in a sense, associated with their platoons or their companies. They don't have day-to-day contact, in a sense, with our whole organization. And then at another level of leadership is strategic. And that's leadership, in a sense, trying to take an organization over time. And I think what's important are two things. And the first one is what's said on the very bottom. And since the Army published doctrine on leadership, the Army has consistently defined it as a process. And this is significant because the process can be learned, monitored, and improved upon. And I think the other aspect is, and which I'd really like to touch base on and emphasize throughout this briefing, is that even though the briefing is Army-centric, we're talking about Army leadership, everything I'll talk about today really is applicable to everyone in any leadership role, via principal, business manager. So it's universal in a sense. But the first thing we need to talk about are, and we'll go to the next slide, are those attributes that people should know and or do. And at this point right now, we should be kind of looking at a red box, looking at within the red box is character, presence, and intellect. Now, in the next couple of slides, we'll talk about a little bit more in depth with those attributes. But before doing so, does anybody have an experience of positive leadership? When you think of people that you emulate, people that are good leaders in your life. What were some of those characteristics, or their presence, or their intellect? And I apologize again. I don't think I can see anybody chat. So if you happen to be trying to send a chat, I don't know if I can see it. All right, let's go to the next one, and that's the next slide, I should say, which is character. And these slides build, so I'll try to get through these, but not being able to look at them. But the first thing is, character. And again, character is a person's moral or ethical, being. And I think when I look back at people that when I was younger, and I'll talk broader sense across these aspects, the individuals that I tried to use as models or individuals that I respected because of their character or their presence or their intellect. And we'll talk about presence and intellect. But under character, you can look at, and let's build the slide. And some of those things are, you look at the values that those individuals may have, or the empathy that they might treat you or other people, or this may be a little bit more military or centric here, but their ethos as service. And really the service part, again, can be, you've worked with somebody who's just always there. Doesn't matter how late, the day may go or anything. They were there as part of the group. And then, individuals that were also disciplined and didn't let things bother them, were able to influence others, abilities in a positive manner. So I think at this point we should be looking at a slide that has attribute, character, and with the values of the warriors and ethos of service, attitudes, and discipline. Does anybody have any questions or?
Again, for those of you who had just joined us, we do have the chat box available. If you'd like to type your questions in there, I'd be more than happy to ask them to Lieutenant Colonel Williams. So please feel free to use that chat box.
Yes. Wait here for a minute. Let our technology catch up. I apologize. I'm not sure our test went well. Okay, let's move to presence, the attribute, and again. Hello? Hello?
Lieutenant Williams, are you still with us?
I am. I thought that everybody else, it sounded like we had a few people drop, is all. I wasn't sure if we got quiet. So, presence, and that might be the impression that people may be having right now because they're having all these technical difficulties, and so it could be a negative, presence right now, the impression. But that's what we're kind of getting at, and if we build a slide, there's some things under that, and you can see those on the left-hand side in yellow. But it's a person's ability to be confident no matter what's going on, even though a briefing may not be going as a planned, or a business proposal may not go in plan. A classroom is being disrupted by students. Been there myself. You be able to just project that self-confidence and poise to be able to control the situation. And really, that's maybe just again being resilient. I think. When we look at individuals that are leaders, they are resilient. They are able to handle things that are good and or negative in a way that they do not get distracted, and they are able to maintain the focus on the mission at presence. And also their bearing. And again, it's not necessarily military bearing. In the military, it might be a different aspect of how they present themselves or project themselves, but again, how people present themselves and their bearing within their own unique profession will impact on your presence. Any questions or comments? And I'll wait here for some chat box responses to be translated for me. Any examples of people in your day-to-day life who maybe have some characteristics of character or presence that we might be able to discuss?
actually do have a comment here, Lieutenant Williams. It's regarding students in the classroom. So could you make the comparison or assumption that presence would be more than just attending class, but it's about being aware of what about the world around you, and especially involving CTE, a lot of the presence actually comes much more from being aware of the skills that you're learning, of what you're doing, and how that translates into career readiness. Do you feel as if that bridges the gap between what we had been discussing education-wise?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase it? I didn't quite catch it all. Presence as in being in, I think.
So in terms of commanding presence and being present, but also having that, being able to draw those comparisons between the work that you're doing and the job skills that you're going to be learning for the future, can that also be a form of presence? Is that also a way that you can interpret this for the CTE community?
No, I think so. Yes. Okay, just had to think about it for a minute, but I do believe so, because I think it would be, and that would probably, if I was moving from the classroom, if I'm coming from the classroom and I'm about ready to go into my profession, whatever it may be, I think having that ability to project my presence to my future employer in my self-confidence that, yes, I can do whatever. I might have to learn some specifics on how a culture or organizational culture might work, but the tasks that I would be familiar with, and I could do whatever you asked me to do. And I think, a part of my job, and we'll end today's briefing on that, is that's what we do now in my current position, is we're trying to build that presence, build that confidence, build that resiliency into young, really, cadets, and just maybe kind of backtrack a little bit. In my current position, most people might have heard the acronym, ROTC. It stands for Reserve Officer Training Corps, and they're on campuses throughout our nation. There's 277 different programs throughout all our major universities, and that is a way, as a means of becoming a commissioned officer into the service. And as part of their training, they do spend some time here at Fort Knox during what would be their junior and their senior year, right before they're just about ready to receive their commission, and then to kind of tie back to this question, to go out into our organization, to go out into the Department of Defense, wherever it may be. I'm Army specific, but they have programs for the other services too. And that's one of the things that we try to accomplish here. Is though they should be though we think that they should know and do these things, some of them, some of these individuals may have these skills, or maybe they only know a little bit about it, or how to begin, depending on their family background, their religious background, their community background. But here within their program, the ROTC program, we just try to emphasize these attributes: character, presence, and then intellect. We'll talk about. So I think yes, ma'am. I do believe, because we do it here within the classroom too, and that's one of the things that we try to get out of the classroom, is to emphasize that attribute of leadership presence within the university classes that the cadets take. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yes, thank you so much. I think it did, Lieutenant Williams. Thank you again.
Okay, and if there isn't any more, what we can do is move on to the final kind of attribute that we kind of expect people to know, and again, it's intellect. And we'll just kind of quickly, we'll build this one real quick. And really the ones that I would like to emphasize is just really the first one, is mental agility. You may a lot of terms that you may refer to now as the ability to critically think, analyze, to have the ability to, in an ambiguous situation, to be able to think your way through, because problem solving is what I'm getting at, and having that ability, and then under judgment, sound judgment, and that really would tie more, in a sense, to some ethical decisions. We want to ensure that we are developing individuals of character, individuals that will who do have the ability to critically think, but in a sense, when they are resolving problems or issues, that it's ethically based, and that they're doing things in that regard. And then, I think, finally, the last one, and again, it doesn't matter what you do. If you're I'm originally from Michigan, the state of Michigan, so, a lot of manufacturing, so you have to be an expert, in whatever that job skill it is, so again, not necessarily related to the military in a sense, but we expect people to be able to be experts and, possess of facts and be able to come to logical decisions as part of that. Are any kind of comments to kind of close this area up here? Any comments or questions on this first portion of the briefing? Again, looking at those things that we expect leaders to know and or should be by the time they get through their commissioning process prior to coming on to that component. Okay, if not, then what we can do is we'll move to the second portion, and again, we should be looking at a slide that has a red box again, which under leads, develops, and achieves, and this is the do. This is the active, the verb. This is what we expect individuals to accomplish. So we expect people to lead. If you're positioned in a position of authority, a position of that requires that, then we expect you to lead. But also to develop. Again, I mentioned earlier that one of the positions that I had, actually both positions, is a mentorship. Again, mentorship is a thing that is discussed and is emphasized strongly within the services, to be able to mentor young leaders into positions of greater authority. And then again, it doesn't matter what your there's always a bottom line, so we achieve results. So again, it doesn't matter if it's taking a test to make sure that the results are there, or scientific matter. There's always, again, it doesn't matter what we do. So expect people to lead, expect people to develop your subordinates, and or to achieve results. Yes, ma'am. And the next slide, I think, kind of really encapsulates that. And I'll let everybody look at everything that's in the green box. But on top, on the left-hand side, you should be able to see leads, develops, and achieves. And then on the right-hand side, is the outcomes from those things. But what I'd like to spend some time on is in the very bottom, because I think, again, this really illustrates the fact that it's leadership doesn't matter where we are, where we are in our, it's in a sense universal, because in the bottom kind of line is leadership is about influencing people. It's allowing people, it's providing people, purpose, direction, and then motivation to accomplish that task. I think most of us would agree that we kind of like to know why we're doing something. That'd be providing the purpose. I don't think people are afraid of doing work or anything of that nature, but they want to know a reason why. Why are we doing this? What are those results from this? What direction is the organization moving? And then, again, to provide motivation for those results, that there is a positive outcome. That is, in a sense, it's worthwhile. People want to be able to do things that are worthwhile. They want to see the results of their labors. In the next couple slides, we'll kind of look into those. Again, the leadership and develops and achieves. But before doing so, does anybody have any comments or questions about that? Okay. All right. What we can do is we'll go. The first thing is, and again, these next couple slides will be similar to before. Let's go to the next one, and that's leads. And if you wouldn't mind, let's just build this slide. Thank you. And I think this one is is really kind of is important, and I think it's something that I personally kind of learned either growing up from my family on how things were, or just as a young officer within the Army. And it's looking down at number 4, and it's kind of lead by example. And I've always, and this is me personally, I never really tried to ask or require of others of what I wouldn't necessarily do myself. And I think that is important. And I think tied to that is the bottom one, which is communicate. Is again communicating. Be able to express those ideas so people can understand. Because it's are there anybody with maybe a communication background? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
We have some attendees who do have a communication background, Lieutenant Williams.
My wife was a communications major, and she always reminds me, you got the 3 parts, you have the sender, the receiver, and then the message. And I think sometimes, maybe as individuals, we tend to forget that there's the receiver. We just as in the listening part. And correct me if I was wrong, anybody out there, but you have to be a good listener. You have to make sure that your message is clear for that individual. And I think that's what I was trying to get at. And if I'm wrong, I'd like to be corrected. But I think it's a good aspect of when we look at why is that individual a good leader. I think it's their ability to communicate. Okay, I believe there was time enough for some chat comments. All right, the next is develops as a leader competency. And again, I think is I think as educators, I think this one is probably can touch is understood or is it's applicable is what I'm trying to say. Excuse me. And really, it's developing others. As teachers, as educators, as mentors. It's providing that support network where required, but then also being stewards of the profession and preparing ourselves. She was also a teacher, so lesson plans, doing those things there. And I think, again, tied to all those things right there as educators, as mentors, is you can have the most spectacular, lesson plan or invest briefing and everything, but if you don't do the number one up there, create a positive environment, students, attendees will tune you out, and and the message won't be received. And so I think that's important, to be able to do that. It's developing isn't necessarily telling. I can tell somebody to do something all day, but if I can get them to listen to me, if I can create that positive environment, and besides being prepared myself, then maybe they'll listen and maybe they'll, get something out of it and be better prepared for whatever may. If they stay in the service, if they continue within the ranks, be better prepared for their next higher position, or if they choose to get out and go off into the civilian world, that they are better prepared in that capacity also. And I'll wait here for a few minutes for any comments or suggestions.
Lieutenant Williams, I just wanted to make a brief comment about, personally, I think this is very fascinating because coming from a CTE perspective, this not only applies to educators but also to students. When we work with CTE, although students can go on to 4-year, 2-year colleges or straight into the workforce, what CTE is primarily focused on is learning those necessary skills, those that can push you straight into the workforce and give you the skills necessary to thrive. So looking at this, I think it's really fascinating because students should also take on these skills. They should also be the leaders. They should be able to learn and develop and lead by example because they are being prepared to enter into the workforce. So I think it's really fascinating how universal all these traits are in leadership and in building these stronger skills for those entering our society. So I think that's very fascinating from a CTE perspective.
Thank you. And the last one, we'll just, in a sense, it's this, and if we don't mind, we'll just build this one here. It's in a sense self-explanatory. Again, it doesn't matter, where we're at in the world. If we're in the workforce, people expect to have, to achieve results. But I think in order to do that, it's sort of right there. Again, you have to set clear objectives. Be on the, enabling individuals to focus on the mission. But for the last kind of few slides, and I do appreciate everybody's paying attention. We've talked about character, presence, intellect, those things that are kind of the know and be, in a sense, when you look at it, do, know, be. And then we looked at lead, develops and achieve. Those are, in a sense, competencies, and those are the do, the kind of the action verb, I believe. And so we went over those in the last few slides, and I kind of hinted at it a few minutes ago with what I do now currently within the ROTC program. And because it is a process and it's always evolving, the ROTC program, the Reserve Officer Training Command, is also in a sense of change. And And if we go to the next slide, what we should be looking at is something called the current model. And currently, and MS stands for a mission set. Just basically it's freshman, sophomore, junior, and then their senior year. An individual can come into the program really one of two ways. One, you come to school as a freshman, and then you go through each of the 4 academic years. But some individuals might have prior service, and they'll be able to come in under mission set number 2 because they might have special skills. Or one day, you might be a junior or a sophomore, and you have a desire to come into ROTC, and then you can come in as something known as a lateral entry. And there's 2 aspects that are key, and one is something called the Leader Development and Assessment course, and we just actually finished that up here this summer, and it runs essentially from June through August. It finished last week, and those are for the progressive students. And then for those students who have a desire to come in a little bit later, we have something called a Leader Training course, and what that does is kind of captures their first 2 years, and then the following year they'll come to the Leader Assessment course. But what we're moving to, and let's go to the next slide, is something called, the future model. And it may look similar, but there's some subtle changes. To begin with, there will be a progressive model. Somebody can still come in a sense, the traditional way, come as mission set 1 through 4. But the difference will be they'll be exposed to 2 summers here at Fort Knox. One of the goals is that every cadet would receive, in a sense, what we would call initial entry training to, in a sense, get a baseline of skills. And we call that cadet initial entry training. And that could happen either after their freshman or after their sophomore year. And then the final thing would be what we're going to, is after their junior year, they would again come to Fort Knox and come to what's known as the Cadet Leader course. Now, the difference is it's no longer an assessment. And I'll get to that in the next slide. What it is a development course. We're trying to move away from assessing, in a sense, to developing. And that's why the change with everybody receiving a baseline early on, and then let's go to the next slide, and it'll make it a little bit clearer. And what we have is, it should say, the current curriculum, and right now it kind of ties with, the traditional model, the model that we're currently in, which is the curriculum pretty much stays the same. Really slight on personal development, lots of tactics and techniques that are specific to the Army. Do a tad bit of ethics and values, and leadership and officership are pretty much the same across the board. There's really no really kind of change in the curriculum and how it's presented to the cadets throughout their program. And in a sense, it's the kind of what we think approach, kind of a I don't want to use the word traditional because it's been a while since I've gone through the program, but more here, this is what you need to know, and write it down and just kind of regurgitate it. And what we're trying to get to in the future program, and I think we need to go to the next slide, and I apologize if I couldn't remember the slide change. Unless it's already there, future curriculum.
No problem. We're at Cadet Summer Training 2014.
Okay.
Would you like back to?
Thought we were on, did one get hidden? I apologize. The curriculum transformation?
No problem. Let's see. Yep, we're on curriculum transformation right now.
Now it makes a lot more sense. It helps if we're all on the same sheet of music. Purpose, direction, and motivation. And I think and it'll tie to our very last slide. And I think this, for us, as we as in the Army develop our process to do leader development, not leader assessment, it's really key. And up front, that personal development. Up front is some leadership, and up front is some tactics, and techniques. But as you see, as a cadet moves across that spectrum, that tactics becomes really small, not a huge emphasis on it. But officership, leadership, values, they increase. And again, the goal is to try to instill in a cadet the ability of how to think, to be a critical thinker, a problem solver, that somebody who, in a sense, can thrive as we look around our world today. It's not as it's a very ambiguous world that we live in, and so we want individuals of character who can make ethical, sound decisions, but we also want individuals and leaders who can work within an ambiguous environment and solve problems with not all information that may be present. And so, the final thing is, so we're kind of, for those of you who might be familiar with the Bloom's taxonomy, we're trying to move up that taxonomy a little bit, to get to analysis and synthesis. Get away from knowledge base and comprehensive base, but really develop individuals that can, know how to think, not necessarily somebody who can regurgitate an order for a sample. Any comments or questions on that? Because I think that, again, even though, again, this is ROTC specific, again, I think it really applies, again, to any, academic, any, work environment in today's world. So any comments?
Hi, Lieutenant Williams. I had a quick comment. When we're looking at personal development versus leadership, I know you had mentioned that one is being able to work to solve any situation, to solve any problem. Is that more in the line of personal development? Is that where you're trying to foster those skills, or is that more under tactics and techniques? I just wanted to get a differentiation between personal development and leadership, or tactics and techniques.
That's a fair question, and that's something that we're looking at, but I can answer it to the best of my ability. When we're looking at personal development, it's interpersonal, and so there are some cognitive testing that we're going to try to do while they're in school. There's some various tests that we're going to apply and use, and also just not test-based, but each of our schools has, it's a lieutenant colonel like myself is in charge of the program. So again, looking at that mentorship and that counseling with those individuals to do self-assessments, figure out, in a sense, what their weaknesses may be, so that they can work on those and develop those as they progress through the program. And then leadership would be more of the things that we kind of discussed in the last few slides, looking at those attributes and those characteristics. So personal development would be a self-assessment of yourself and emphasizing that as they come into the program, and that should then, in a sense, decrease as those you become more self-aware of yourself as you go through the program. And then leadership, looking at those be, know, do type attributes and competencies that we expect a leader to have.
Most definitely. Thank you for your answer. That was perfect.
And I think we'll go to the final slide, and we all should be looking at a quad chart of what really ROTC is about. So again, and I'll start from the upper left, is we have what we know as a leader training course, and it's going to transition, as I said, into something called Cadet Initial Entry Training. And really this is just a kind of a baseline. It's a 28-day course the cadets, the individuals that come here, just kind of emphasize kind of the basic skill sets and Army, and we introduce them to the Army values. And then I'll kind of digress from here. This is a very large training program. It's actually the largest training program in the continental United States. Over the course of the summer, we had, when you look at the cadre, that we bring here, and then the cadets, there were over 14,000 individuals this summer here at Fort Knox, so very extensive. We had about 1,500 cadets that were a part of the leader training course. And to the right of that is our LDAC. That's kind of the culminating course. And like I mentioned, we're transitioning that course to a cadet leader course, and there are about 6,000 individuals this summer over the course of the summer. And I think, again, I just want to highlight one last time. Again, this is what we want this course to do when we move to the cadet leader course, is that it's a developmental course, and that, again, going back to the program, that the MS4 year is their culminating year versus the MS3, which is currently is, and I didn't talk about that. And we really want to emphasize on their MS4 year because of the question that was asked earlier, preparing those individuals with presence, because for most of them, after this summer, within 9 or 10 months, they're going to be young lieutenants in the Army, and they're going to be expected to have a job set, some skills. And so that's why the emphasis on their final year versus their junior year. And then on the lower left, you may or may not be aware, but we actually send cadets all over the world. And what we have is the Cultural and Language Training Program. And I find this a very interesting program. We send, most of them are just finishing their freshman year, so you're looking at 19, 20-year-olds. And we send them to about, this last summer, it was 52 different countries throughout the world, and they go on about a 3-week course, and they'll work with the State Department, other military organizations, but there are about 1,400 of these cadets, and they immerse themselves in the language. They don't necessarily have to have the language skills beforehand, but just they're in those countries, working hand in hand, as you can see in the images there, and the feedback is tremendous on that program. And then the final aspect of cadet training in the summer is maybe what you'd be consider more traditional. They get to go to Army schools, airborne school, or air assault school. More Army specific type training. But in essence, this is the culminating, or not culminating. This is the Army's beginning developmental process for leadership, how we bring young leaders into the Army, and then through their course of time in the Army, they'll go to the basic course, or they'll then go on to their captain's career course, and then and then the Command and General Staff College. Because as I mentioned before, we view it as a process. It's never ending, and I think that's the last thing I'd like to talk about. It's not necessarily leadership, but one of the last things that we're trying to emphasize is a lifelong learner attribute. Somebody that continually desires to learn, achieve, as a leader. So with that, does anybody have any comments or questions on the leader development process, at least specific to how the Army is, but more importantly, how that may be applicable to your professions, your career choices? Well, I'd really like to thank everybody's patience with the technology today, but just thank you for listening. And if you have any, again, any questions or comments, I'll stay online and answer those. But it's been a very good, experience, and it's been a pleasure being able to do this today. And I'd like to just say thank you for providing the opportunity for me. Thank you.
Lieutenant Colonel Williams, we also have 2 more slides up here if you would like to talk a little bit about those. I know you had briefly discussed ROTC desired outcomes. We also have cadet summer training outcomes. If you'd like any of this information or like to discuss it a little more, please feel free to do so. If anybody has any questions, again, the chat box is available. We are open for a Q&A if you have any questions regarding this online seminar.
Okay, I thought that, I guess we had the different, and what happens when we change our slides, right? Which one is up, and I can talk about it?
Right now we have ROTC desired outcomes. I know you had briefly gone over that, so again, feel free to.
Let's go to the last one, I think, and I think I'm already hit most of those, the cadet summer training outcomes, and as I walked my way through it. But again, no way will I read all this, but I'd like to just kind of emphasize some things. And I think for the first one, it's for the LTC one, it's really bullet number 2. Again, it's that understanding and being proficient in the individual military skills. That's kind of our goal. And then for LDAC, again, it's emphasizing that is they're getting ready to transition from being college students to leaders in the profession of arms within the Army. And then finally, for it's again cultural language and understanding program, just providing confidence to those individuals to again work in an ambiguous, uncertain environment. Most of the, not all the trips are to places that may be familiar, like where you might want to take a vacation. We go to Africa, we go to Asia, not necessarily. Europe or those places where you might have a context of going there, but they're places that you may not have an understanding of their culture. So we want to try to instill that in them and to be able to appreciate that those differences. And then the one in the middle. And it's the Mission Set 3, and what that really stands for is the pilot program, proof of principle program that we ran. And it's interesting because it was mentioned earlier about cadets training, not cadets, students, kind of in a sense being a part of the process, teaching themselves, being, leaders. And really that's kind of what that was. And one of the aspects that we're trying to do is to integrate those MS Mission Set 3 cadets into the earlier program as leaders. And so the feedback has been very positive. So in a sense it's peer-to-peer education. So a little bit of, they have some experience, so they're able to mentor those younger cadets on some of their experiences. They're not obviously commissioned officers. They don't have vast experience in the Army, but they have an experience within their ROTC experience, and so we found the positive influencers on those younger cadets who maybe have some concerns, trepidation, just on what they're getting into, and so far it's been a positive program. So again, it's more of a peer-to-peer cadets teaching cadets type program. So any comments or chat box questions?
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Colonel Williams, for being with us today. I really appreciate it. And even through all the technical difficulties, you did an absolutely amazing job. And I'm really glad you came out and presented for us today.
No, again, I do appreciate it. And if anybody has any comments or questions, I'll gladly answer them.
Also, just a quick clarification, we will also have this presentation available on ACTE Live. We do archive a lot of our online seminars. If for some reason you have any further questions or you want to rewatch this or pass this information on to other colleagues, please feel free to do so. We should have it up within the next few days. So again, also, if you have any questions regarding which online seminars are available and which are recorded online, feel free to contact me. Again, my name is Celia Loomis. I'm the Digital Media Coordinator here at ACTE. And if there are no further questions, then I'm going to thank our speaker one more time, Lieutenant Brian Williams, and thank you again for everyone coming out today. I greatly appreciate it. And keep a lookout for our more of our U.S. Army Partnership online seminars coming in the next few months. I think the next one is September 17th. This will be regarding science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which is a really hot topic in CTE right now. So we're really looking forward to having that online seminar. And again, thank you again for everyone coming out today, and hope you have a great rest of the day.